Smokers in Newcastle and the city of Manchester will no longer be able to light up outside pubs, restaurants and cafes after councillors have banned it. Northumberland, Durham and North Tyneside have done the same, while Oxfordshire is looking to follow suit with plans to become smoke-free by 2025.
It's caused a huge debate online this morning here on the show. So we're asking the basic question, should smokers be forced to stub it out, or do they have the right to be, I suppose you could use this old joke, fuming by this decision? Joining us now is author Rebecca Jane, who totally supports the ban, and journalist and smoker Ella Whelan, who says it's going to put punters off going down the pub. Is it really? You know, if you can't have a cigarette, therefore you don't want to drink?
Well, we know that the smoking ban previously that came in that banned smoking indoors had an effect on the kind of pubs that are at the heart of small communities, so the ones that are on the corner that don't have enough money or enough space to have the big pub garden with the different space for people smoking. So we know it has a knock-on effect. And after a year, 15 months, more than a year, of pubs having to jump through, and restaurants and cafes having to jump through hoops of, testing or QR codes or sanitizing stations and social distancing, another thing, an extra thing, a ridiculous thing, such as forcing people to not just stand outside the pub, but stand across the street or far away around the corner, is just another thing to make punters think, oh, this is such a hassle, I'm not going to go. And we should be supporting the hospitality industry and its staff, who have had a horrendous time over this pandemic, and really, I think, strip back all regulations that say, let's get people back out there. I mean, not exactly the eat out to help out regime and the scheme, but something like that. A kind of sense of social life is more important.
There you go, Rebecca, you're being ridiculous.
Yeah, I can't actually believe that we've just said that we're being ridiculous trying to protect people's health. That's quite new. So yeah, I think it's absolutely terrible. I think that 100% that smoking should just be banned in general. What,
just a complete ban on smoking in public? Just smoking?
Yeah, absolutely.
Smoke in your own house or your own garden? You see, I'm actually wondering, Ella, I'm not saying whether or not I agree with that, but I'm wondering if that is what's going to happen. Because if you look at the graph, if you like, of public policy on smoking, it's getting less and less and less and less and less. And at some point, she might be right. That might be the end game.
I think it's actually important for people who hate smoking and who can't stand it to stand in solidarity with the few smokers that are left. Not because not because it smells good, or because actually even smokers themselves know that it's a bad thing to do. Of course, we know that it affects your health, like many other things, like drinking to excess, like eating to excess. There's lots of things in life that cause us harm, but that we choose as adults, that we make risk assessments and decide to do because we want to or because we have to. And so smoking is one of those things I think we should give more trust to adults to be able to make decisions. The important thing about bans is that everyone thinks that, but you put in place bans and it makes people healthier, it makes people feel better, it helps and supports smokers to give up. What's actually happened over the last sort of 10, 20 years is that making cigarettes extortionate or banning them in certain areas has meant that people have no choice but to give up. And that's a very different thing. That's treating adults like children. The realm of pubs, clubs, and even restaurants is supposed to be an adult space. And the important thing about this is, I think, in the informal ways in which we work these things out. Most restaurants, for example, have smoking tables and non-smoking tables. You'd be hard-pressed to find a smoker who'd want to blow fumes into your face. Most people are decent and nice and can get on with each other. Why do we think we have to have government or councils telling us how to interact? I mean, that's a bit pathetic, isn't it?
I mean, Rebecca Jane, is there something there? Is there a halfway house where there were some areas that were designated for smoking, or some premises that were designated that if you wanted to smoke that you could go there? Would you accept that? How do you feel if you're outside somewhere and someone's smoking right next to you? What would you do?
Absolutely horrendous. I think I'd absolutely tell them something about it, or I would obviously move, but the onus shouldn't be on me, it should be on them. The point of this, though, is that we have just come out of, we are coming out, hopefully, of a pandemic that is based on a respiratory virus. And we're now still talking about smoking. And you want to use that age-old argument about, we should all be entitled to make our own choices. Yes, we do. But then Why do we have laws or rules or regulations about anything in the country? People need guidance. And if you want to talk about burden on the NHS and we want to protect it and we want to go out every Thursday and clap for the NHS, let's start with something that actually contributes to 75,000 people dying every year.
You see, Ella, I've been in this silly game for many, many, many years, and I remember having a debate almost exactly sounding like this quite a few years ago on our Channel 4 show. It may even have been on this morning, when the ban was put in place on smoking inside clubs and pubs and restaurants and all the rest of it. And people like you were saying exactly the same thing. And yet here we are today, and nobody would think about lighting up in a pub or a club. It's not seen as an infringement on liberty. I bet you don't feel when you go into a pub or a restaurant that your liberty has been infringed because you can no longer smoke inside. I'm sure it isn't. Don't you feel, I come back to my opening comment to you, don't you feel that in a few years' time, this conversation will look as dated as the one, and this argument will look as dated as the one we had about smoking inside all those years ago?
Well, I mean, of course, if you're smoking indoors, the levels of ventilation mean that it is going to have a knock-on effect to the people around you. You know, if you're in a small one of those, I mean, you know, if you're in one of those small pubs where you're all crammed around different tables, then the smoke is going to carry, and it's not going to be, people are going to smell it or people are going to breathe it in. So I think, you know, banning it indoors, fair enough. But we're talking about, let's be clear. Let me just be clear about what's actually happening. Because in Oxfordshire County, they want to ban it everywhere. I mean, like, when you're a mile away from someone, they want to ban it everywhere. And in the city of Manchester and Northumberland, they want to ban it on the streets outside of restaurants. Okay. So we're talking about outside. We're talking, you know, and yes. I'm glad the other speaker brought up coronavirus. I mean, it's funny that actually they found that the virus wasn't having a huge knock-on effect, as you might expect, on smokers. So there was something interesting going on there. Well, but of course, we know that outside respiratory diseases and things that are subject to ventilation are much more safe. Okay. It is just but you can't to suggest you should ban it outside.
But you can't parallel the fact that COVID is less transmittable outside with smoking outside, and that's not my opinion. That's medical opinion. We've got Dr. Amir here. You were saying earlier, because we kicked. Oh, he's over there. Sorry.
I'm over here.
Sorry. Looking at my notes, not looking at your face.
Give us the medical expertise point of view then on this.
OK, so I've got to be clear. I work in a socially deprived area and there's a high levels of smoking, and I understand people who have difficult, chaotic lives need a break from that, and cigarette smoking is part of that. However, coming at it from a purely health point of view, yes, it's a personal choice, but your personal choices shouldn't infringe on other people. And if you are smoking, even outdoors, and there's people in the vicinity, including children, and we've got to be clear, restaurants and pubs are not just adult-only spaces, there are children there as well, and they'll be breathing this in, and there's all sorts of problems associated with it. And we've seen, since the ban on smoking indoors, we've seen a reduction in heart attacks in younger people in particular. We know passive smoking is linked to increased risks of lung cancer, increased risk of asthma attacks, particularly in children. And, of course, I've talked about it before, the environmental impact of the cigarette butts, which are really, really important.
Ella, can I just ask you one more question? Just please give it a brief reply. My dad died of a heart attack when he was 49. Completely unexpectedly. He was a lifelong smoker, and the post-mortem showed that it was smoking that had killed him. It had really damaged his heart. Was that a freedom worth him having?
I think it's all about choice. And the thing that's really dystopian in all of this is that those who are against smoking, who want bans, think that choice is a bad thing. I mean, and most people who are most sensible adults listen to doctors and their good advice about how bad smoking is for your health, maybe make a decision to give up, maybe don't. But in the kind of prioritization of choice and freedom of us to interact freely, to not be so suspicious of each other. You know, smokers aren't going around, Cruella de Vil, waiting to blow smoke into the faces of children. Let's relax a little bit. Let's enjoy this reopening of society to look afresh at our public spaces and say, how can we all get along a bit better together without the restriction of government, of which we've suffered under for the last 15 years?
We're going to have to leave it there, but Ella Whelan and Rebecca Jane, thanks very much for joining us this morning. Lots of you getting in touch. Thank you so much for all your views. And we've been asking you on Twitter, should smoking be banned outside? Let's take a look at the results. 52% of you said yes. 48% of you said no.
That's much closer than I was expecting.
It is, isn't it?
Because the comments we've got online, we had many more comments in favour of this ban than we did.
We will wait to see what happens, but thanks very much for getting in touch this morning.
Yeah, thank you.